your press release is not a piece of advertising. So that's going to be like your little, I don't want to say piece of advertising, but like if people are interested. Hey everyone, welcome to the S.O.B Marketing Podcast, where we celebrate the S.O.B that you are. And if you haven't figured it out yet, we mean small-owned business. We don't mean S.O.B.
Listen, we know that as a small business owner, you are working hard on the daily to keep your business fully operational while trying to promote it. And while some days it may feel like the business is owning you, if we're being honest with each other, I bet you would admit that you wouldn't give up the insanity for anything.
Our commitment here at the S.O.B Marketing Podcast is to give you the real talk, what works when it comes to advertising, marketing, promoting your business, and then what doesn't really work.
And Chelsea and I promise to always keep the conversation real.
Business friends, welcome back to another episode of the S.O.B Marketing Podcast. I'm here with my beautiful sister, Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea.
Hey, Vivian.
So we have another exciting episode for you today, but before we get into it, let's do a little housekeeping. If you guys have not already subscribed to this podcast, please do so. That really helps us out a lot, as well as reviews. If you have enjoyed any of the episodes that we have posted thus far, please just go ahead and rate the podcast or leave us a little love note in the review section. Another way that you can support what we're doing here, in regards to helping small business owners with their marketing initiatives, is to share this episode. If you have a small business friend that is out there just kind of struggling or feeling like they're doing things on their own, that's the reason we get on every week and talk about these topics. So Chelsea, what wonderful topic are we? First of all, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, what are we talking about today?
Well, today I'm very excited because we are talking about another free marketing strategy, free marketing tool for you to use to get some publicity. And you might not know about it, but we are going to be going into press releases.
Oh, press releases are so daunting. I feel like they get such a bad rap for that reason. For one, it seems, when I say press release, it seems very formal.
Yeah, it does.
And if y'all don't know, Chelsea and I have a 15-year age gap between us, and we did go to the same university and studied the same major. So Chelsea, I'm about to ask you something. Mm-hmm. When I was coming up in school and we were taught press releases, there was this handy dandy little book that they gave us, and it was like the AP, the Associated Press way of writing. And so we were taught to actually write press releases based off of this book. Like there was a certain style that you had to kind of, package it up in. Did you guys get the same?
So we did get the little book that you're talking about, the AP book. We were not taught press releases, though. Yeah, I know. And I think we were probably supposed to be taught press releases because this was my communications class. But instead, she gave us like a 40-page presentation we had to create instead of doing anything that I would have found useful. But, that it's fine. It's fine.
Well, looping it back to, how we're going to talk about this today, though, is in her defense. Okay. All right. So press releases are really funny because they change with the environment. Okay, so they change with the times. Mm-hmm. So essentially, the press release you probably would have been taught to write would have been very different than the press release I was taught to write back in 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's today in 2024, the reason we're bringing this up, and I hope this discussion is going to be super valuable to people, is because what I wanted to do is I wanted to strip away this idea of it's very corporate and it's very right. So we want to make it accessible because it is easier now more than ever to take advantage of this.
Absolutely. And Vivian, I do want to say, I hope that the Seasoned Marketer and this podcast, S.O.B Marketing Podcast, I hope that we're also showing you guys that marketing doesn't have to be corporate. Because I feel like marketing a lot of times gets a bad rap of being a bunch of men in suits sitting around a circular table talking about, oh, the kids are going to love this, even though they have no idea what they're talking about. And that is absolutely not what marketing is. I mean, is that what marketing is in these big corporations? No comment. But that is not what marketing has to be. And I feel like press releases are an amazing tool that can absolutely be fun if you do it correctly.
Yeah. So and it's funny because when you said, when you're making fun of like the men in corporate and you're like, what do the cool kids like? I feel like now marketing is the cool kids are driving it, right? So they're telling you exactly what's up and how they want the information.
I feel like some marketing, some corporations are like that. Others, it's very uncomfy because they're just doing it very wrong.
Okay, so Chelsea, starting the discussion, what exactly is a press release?
I'm glad we're bringing this up because I bet you there are some small business owners right now that are like, okay, you keep on saying press release. Am I supposed to know what that means, right? A press release, put simply, is just a piece of information that you as the business owner is sharing with the public and to the press because it is newsworthy. It is something you want to share with the public, and it's an official statement on whatever your subject is.
Yeah, the way that I like to look at it now, and we'll get into this here in a second because the times are a changing. And trust me, from a gal who's been doing this a very, very long time, back in the day, we used to actually have to format these press releases and send it in, and it had to look all corporate. That's not the case anymore. There are like so many different ways that now you can send this piece of written communication in.
Yeah.
What I like to think of it as is what you're essentially doing as a small business owner when you're utilizing a press release is you're closing that gap between having the reporter and the journalist work so hard and you basically like serving them up something on a platter and making it so enticing that they're like, well, hot dang, why wouldn't I print that thing, right? Like, I want to share that information.
Absolutely. And I think you've talked about this before on our main channel, the Season Marketer, but if you're worried that these news companies won't pick up your story, think about how social media has changed the news. The news stories are now 24/7, right? Like there's no stop in the information they're sharing because of social media. They now have to be consistently sharing and posting. So they're going to take the news that you give them. I mean, if it's well written and, actually newsworthy, don't just send in like a random piece of information.
Here's the thing is if you're kind of, because I do understand this, Chelsea, you and I have a background where I think we're naturally just more inclined to, for one, we ask a lot of random questions. We're not afraid to approach people. We're just nosy. Okay? We're nosy BS. So like for us, it's not that far of a leap to where we're like, hey, let me reach out to the local newspaper to let them know about X, Y, and Z. But for some small business owners, that's not the case. If for whatever reason you have any hesitation and you're like, I just don't think that would be effective for me, I want to give you a different perspective. You are doing these reporters and journalists a favor by notifying them and giving them a heads up, regardless of whether or not they pick it up. Let's say they don't pick up your information, they don't share it on their Facebook page, they don't put it in their publication. Regardless, what you're doing is you're throwing in your newsworthy, event, or if you hire someone, whatever your information is that you want them to blast out there, you're throwing it in the hat for them to be able to go through and say, oh, that's a good one, right? Because the strain of what you just said, Chelsea, where as a reporter, and like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I remember back in the day, y'all think about this logically. Back in the day, we had weekly newspapers. Okay. So that meant if they came out on Sundays, you got that Sunday paper that was thrown at your door and always ended up in the bushes. It was every Sunday. There was a cadence. It gave the reporters a deadline. If you want your story to go in this Sunday issue, it's got to be completed by this day.
Yeah.
Okay. That cadence is gone. That schedule is gone because, like you said, now everything is 24/7. Why am I going to pick up that Sunday paper if I've just read about this on Facebook on a Wednesday?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So you're helping them. These reporters need you as a small business to tell them what's going on in the community so that they have the option to print it and share it with the community.
I have a question. Are newspapers still delivered? Do people still get newspapers?
Yeah, so what they've done is there are two options now with newspapers. They have a digital version, which everybody, they're called paywalls, and it pisses people off to no end, all right, including me, okay? Even though I fully support, I know that they got to make their money somehow because it's not cheap to print stuff. I get that. But what they're doing now is if you're a newspaper, you could get your subscription online.
Yeah.
And so what happens if you've ever gone to your whatever city you're in, go to the big newspaper in your city and try to go to their Facebook page, try to click on a story. You'll read the first paragraph and then this little pop-up comes up and it's like, hey, do you have a subscription?
Yeah.
And so basically it's like, hey, for $12.99 a month, you can read this.
The Post and Courier, I remember that the Post and Courier does that, but I just stopped reading it then. I'm like, oh, I guess it's not important.
Yeah, well, and to the other part, so there's that, but to your point, your question,
Yeah.
they do still have a actual paper that they print. The only thing is the delivery isn't as obviously as popular as it used to be back in the day. And I don't know, I know magazines still do a lot of the drop-offs. So for example, when you're at the coffee shop, Copamana, you know they have like those Azalea magazines right there.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, so they have the magazines there. So there are locations that you can still pick up. Like back in the day, you used to be able to go to, Chelsea, I'm aging myself. Do you remember those machines where you would put a quarter in and then open it and take the paper out?
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
So they used to have stations like that all throughout the city, and I think they ended up doing away with those. So you can still get it delivered to your house. You just have to.
Yeah. I don't want us to get on a tangent, but I do want to say really quick. When I was in college, that very first year, 2016, was the first time that our women's basketball team won, like the finals. And we had little newspaper where you could pull them out. And so I had all the news. I still have all of the newspapers of like, oh, we made it to 16, Sweet 16, Final Four, we won. I have all of those newspapers.
Context for those of you listening, we went to the University of South Carolina.
Yes.
And we have like one of the probably the best women's basketball coach there. And so she definitely elevated our women's basketball team. And so that's why that was such a big deal for the University of South Carolina, because that was the first time that we actually won that championship. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I do think on campuses, on college campuses, Chelsea, they still utilize those machines to dispense newspapers because they have the campus newspapers that they do.
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was a campus newspaper, so
yeah,
it makes sense.
All right, so going back to the topic at hand, though, with regards to a small business utilizing and leverage press releases, can you give me an example, Chelsea, that you've had in your time, I guess maybe within the last like 3 or 4 years, where you've leveraged or utilized it?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you 2 examples, one of it going very well and one of it going very poorly. So I'm going to give you the very well example first.
We told you guys we keep it real around here.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie to you guys. So actually, I'll say the poorly first, because my point is going to be, you do actually need to have like a story, like something happening. You need news. When I worked at the allergy place, one of the providers came to me and they're like, "Hey, I need you to send out a press release." I'm like, "Okay, that's great. What are we announcing?" And he was like, "Just make something up. Like, I just want us to be in the newspaper, so just write an article for them to post." I'm like, "Well, I don't think that's going to work. Like, I think you need to actually have a newsworthy story for them to publish it, because if you're just writing them an article, they're going to ask you to become an advertiser for them, right? Like, that's part of what newspapers do now to stay open, like to make money, is they say, okay, you can partner with us and we'll write stories, articles about you guys, and we'll advertise you guys and stuff like that. Press releases are different. You are sharing a newsworthy story, so they're not going to ask you to advertise with them. But we didn't have anything going on. Like, there was nothing newsworthy to advertise. I think I ended up writing, like, it was springtime. So I was like, okay, well, springtime allergies are coming. So just so you know, like, I don't even remember what I wrote, because I was trying to frame it in a way where I was like, this is news. It didn't work. No one answered me. No one came back to me. No one ran the story. I wasn't surprised.
All right, so a couple things, and I love that you shared this for various reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, in what Chelsea just mentioned, when you reach out to a media company,
Yes.
and let's say you're like, hey, I have some newsworthy event or information. If what you're sending in is nothing but an ad,
Yeah.
they're going to say, hey, ad department, here's the name of the person at this business, and reach out to them, because obviously they want to take an ad out. Okay. So to your point, they're not going to reach out to you and they're not going to run that, because why would they run just a big ad? It does need to be something that's relevant to either the season. So I'm glad you brought that up. If you're saying, if you have somebody that approaches you and says this, and they're like, hey, just get me in the press. Okay. You're going to have to do a little digging. And some of that digging, the way you can spin it or look at it is, okay, what's going on today in the overall community? And do I have something that I can kind of attach to that? Okay. The other one is, for example, summertime. All right. School's let out. If you have a small business that is now offering kids meals, or kids eat free during summer because the kids are out, or something like that, that would be a perfect opportunity, because it ties up to parents trying to find things to do, with kids during their summer break. And then the second part of it is, whenever you were talking about, hey, they're going to have someone reach out to you for ads, there is a partnership that is somewhere between a hard ad that you see pop up and a news story, and that's called sponsored content.
Yes.
Okay. Now, press releases, if you're talking about a hierarchy, my hierarchy is press releases are at the very top, because that's free press. You're not paying anything for that. Okay. And it also is looked at differently, I think, because the thing is, the newspaper, the news outlet, the TV station, they're printing it, right? So it obviously feels like it's coming from a source of credible information. Okay, so you have press releases, then you have sponsored content, where if you guys are scrolling through Facebook and you ever see an ad, well, you see a story and at the top it has the sponsored content text. That's what this is. It's basically, they have paid for it, but they have assigned a writer or a reporter or a journalist to it, and they're, telling some type of story to it. Those are typically, like you said, those you don't have to really have much of a storyline behind it, because the journalist that they assign to you helps you figure out where that newsworthy nugget is.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, you're going to have paid ads.
And this isn't like, we're not saying paid ads don't work and don't do them. We're just saying, like, this is our hierarchy, like how.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the way people perceive it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the hierarchy of the way people perceive it, if Live 5 News runs a story, I see that differently than if I read a sponsored content from them, because I know that the sponsored content was a paid for written article.
Absolutely. Okay, so that was my example of it going poorly. There was no plan, no thought out story, nothing newsworthy. It going correctly, Bray, our friend who has a salon, at the time, she was still with, ooh, also very exciting. She used to be a part of the By Claudia Spas. It's a franchise. She actually rebranded. She's no longer a part of that franchise. She's doing her own thing now. She is Sweet Rose Company, still in the same location. It's just, it is all her now. She is no longer a franchise owner. She is a small business with her own branding. We're so proud of her. It's great. But at the time, in the past, I don't remember what year this was, probably 2021, 2022, but it was her 5-year anniversary in Somerville. And now Somerville is a very close-knit community. So I was like, this is a perfect news story for Somerville for a press release. I was like, they are absolutely going to run this. And she was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I'm sure. So we wrote up a little thing. It's our 5-year anniversary. She had a little party to celebrate it, an event. She loves being part of Somerville, wrote it up, sent it over, and we actually had the Somerville Journal run the story. So one of their writers reached out to Bray, was like, hey, can you just elaborate a little bit so I can add that in? Can you do it by this day so I can get it in on the Sunday newspaper? She did it. Everything went great. And by Sunday, we were in the newspaper, in the Somerville Journal.
Yeah, so the nice thing about that is she took an event that she was having that was tied to a big milestone for her business. So it was her 5-year anniversary. She was having like a, thank the community type of thing come in. The nice thing about that too is, y'all, outside of just the free PR that she was getting for it, she also was opening her doors so that people could come in and see the spa. She does wax spa, to see the spa before they actually ever purchased from her. And so if I'm someone that's like, I kind of want to go to a spa, but I don't know of any, or I'm just not going to walk in on a Tuesday and check it out, you know. So it gave them an opportunity to come in and just kind of like mingle with her. But yeah, that's you can use this for anything, you guys. I mean, here's the other part. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about, let's say you're in real estate and you've expanded your services or you brought on a team member. That's a great opportunity to send in a headshot, to send in a bio of the team member. And there's one key thing that Chelsea said when she was mentioning that in her experience with the Somerville Journal scene, they reached back out and they were like, hey, can you expand on this a little more? The key here is we're going to do the basics of what they taught us in school when you're writing an essay: who, what, where, when, and why. The more information that you give them up front, and no matter how well written sometimes it is, they will call you up just to get a quote or something like that. But you want to cover your bases and give them as much information to make it as seamless as possible for them to actually type up or to put this new story together. So the less puzzle pieces they have to reach out for and put together, it bodes better for you.
Absolutely. My suggestion would be, obviously make sure it is well written and try the best that you can to give them the opportunity to just copy and paste. Like if you make it super easy, super simple, they can just copy and paste and do that, they're more likely to use your story. It's less effort for them. And they're already, as we said, as busy as they can be. So make it easy for them. I do also want to say, with that story, with the press release and Bray, the story getting picked up by the Somerville Journal, that was not the only media company that I sent it to. I sent it to all of them here in the Low Country, right? So all of the Charleston Post and Courier. I sent it to Charleston today. Send it to as many people as possible because one, you don't know if anyone's going to pick it up. So give yourself some good odds. And two, the more the merrier. That'd be wonderful if multiple media companies picked up your story.
If you want an actionable step that you can take today towards moving the needle forward on utilizing and leveraging free press, do one of two things. Either decide, are you a pencil and paper type of person, or are you a digital person? If you're a digital person, go ahead and create a spreadsheet with a few columns in there. Put the media company's name, the contact, and then the email address. And then if you are a pencil and paper person, well, you're in luck because we actually created a free download, and it's a PR list tracker. So basically, we've just put this in a PDF format where you can print it out and write in name and contact information. But and Chelsea will put the link to that right here.
Yes.
Yeah, but basically, it's the seasonmarketer.com/PR.
Can I just say real quick, you might be thinking, I don't have to do that. I can just, y'all, be reasonable. You're going to forget people. You're going to forget about some media company. Just make it super easy for yourself and have it all written down, organized in one spot. So then when you write your press release, you can just tick off all the people. Make sure you hit everyone.
Yeah, I can't do my clicking sound as good as you. But you are right. The thing is, you're more prone to taking action and doing it when you make it easier on yourself too, right?
Yeah.
So whenever something does spring up, you want to be able to take action on that relatively quickly. And so having this list or database helps. We do recommend that every 6 months you go in and just double check to be sure that the point of contact is still correct, because the journalism moves fast.
Yeah.
Reporting moves fast, people change, they go to different stations, they do all that stuff. The other thing, I don't want to sidestep here, but we talked earlier about how it changes with the times.
Yes.
All right. There is something so easy now that these companies do, y'all. And basically, you go to their website and you find the submit a tip page. Okay. And basically, they have fields that you just fill out your name, your email address, you write a paragraph or whatever, and then you can attach a picture. Yep. What I like to do, I have utilized this. And so if you're wondering where this kind of fits in, when we talk about press releases the old school way, and what I still do is I will take the press release and typically, well, let me tell you how things have morphed. I would take the press release, right, and I would put it I'd type it up and I'd put it in a Word document. I would then take the email addresses of the reporters that I had, and I would, send it to each one of them. And I would do a little paragraph in the email and say, like, hey, attached is the press release, and attached is a headshot or a photo or something. Yeah. Nowadays, I quit attaching the document, and now I copy and paste my actual written press release in the email.
Yeah.
I'm eliminating one step. You don't even have to open a document. It's right here in the email, okay? My subject line is what I hope you will take as the headline, okay? Then now, if you're utilizing this submit and use tip, I go in there, I find the submit and use tip page, I fill in the information, I copy and paste what I would have put in the body of the email, and now I just paste it in this thing. Sometimes they do have, a maximum character length.
Yeah.
Most of the time they don't. Yeah. And that's a great way. So if you guys are finding it intimidating and you're like, I do not want to sit down and write a press release, great. There is no reason that you still cannot submit a news tip. Okay, literally just go in there. Just remember who, what, where, when, and why.
That's if we are going to go into a loose outline for press releases, but if you don't want to do that, like Vivian said, just make sure you're answering all the questions.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Let me give you one. If you need one reason, you're like, well, Chelsea, why would I even think about doing a press release, right? Okay, well,
I mean, I don't understand why you'd still have that question, but go ahead.
yeah. Well, no, if they're wondering why wouldn't I just do a submit and use tip and just go
Okay.
through the press release format? Because what Chelsea said earlier is key. The more pretend you're the reporter. Okay, pretend your job is to be a reporter. Write the darn news story how you would want to see it printed. Okay, and we all know because we read so much news day to day, we know what that sounds like. We know that details are important, and we know that there's got to be a buy-in or a tie-in to the community. Why is it important to people, right? Not just a big ad. But to her point earlier, if you put it in a press release format and you write it really well, the ultimate goal, and I've had this happen, it's flattering. It's flattering when they don't change one darn sentence of the press release that you send in. You're like, dang, I wrote a good press release. Okay. That's what you hope. You hope that they read it and they're like, wow, this is really good. Like I don't have to do anything. Or I just have to call the owner to get one or two more details or to get a quote or to get, so like she said, the least amount of work you're giving them to do, the better.
I do want to say the key here is writing it how a news reporter would write it. And you and I have had this conversation because when I was first starting out, you were helping me and I was writing a press release and I had you look at it and you were like, it's great. This was written by a marketer. You gotta reword it. Like you have an exclamation point in here. You can't have that. News don't have exclamation points. Like news stories don't do that. Like you're writing this from a marketer standpoint. You need to be in the mindset of a journalist. Just something to remember when you're writing a press release. It's going to be very easy for you to be like, I want to sell my business. But really, what you need to be doing is, I want to tell this story because it's newsworthy, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it was I'm a little disenfranchised by the news these days, just for several reasons. But one of them is this. To your point, back in the day, and especially when I was coming up and we were submitting stuff, and to your point, Chelsea, it's almost like your writing has to be void of emotion. Yeah. Okay, and the reason I say that is because the goal of a good news reporter or good journalist is to just provide facts.
Yes.
Or to be the person that captures a story and shows the story for what it is, right? There shouldn't be emotion in there. There shouldn't be outrage. There shouldn't be this and that. Now, I find that I'm getting a little older. That's how I know I'm older, because sometimes I'll tell you when I'm scrolling through and I see some of these news companies and I read their headlines and I'm like, well, that's clickbait. Yeah. I know the only reason you're doing that is because you want people to click on the article and read it, and then the article is not really going to be what you're promising them, right? So they're trying to evoke like some type of like, hey, read me. And I get it that that's kind of the ultimate goal of a headline a little bit. Like it's got to pull enough intrigue to get someone to open and read.
Yeah.
But even when the old school print papers, that was the goal of it. But the thing is, to your point, there are just some things you don't do when you're sending in facts. Yeah. Okay, exclamation points, question marks. I mean, those are stuff that don't really belong in press releases.
Yeah.
Emojis. And Chelsea, you might be laughing at the emoji thing, but here's the thing is that is it's like infiltrated our communication these days. And that's the way that people communicate. I mean, when you have kids walking around making the heart shape, like in their hands, yeah, I don't even know how to do it. Mine just looks like
like that.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing, is it's infiltrating our communication. So I'm not saying that in 5 years it won't be appropriate to put emojis in your press release. Just don't do it now. It's not appropriate in 2024.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Just remember stuff. News is supposed to be factual.
Yes.
News supposed to be factual. So I want to go through a little outline, things you want to put in your press release. You want your contact information in the header, so how they can get to you if they have some questions. Your title and your subheading needs to summarize what the press release is going to be about. 3, the news location and what the news is or why it's newsworthy. So like that's the why part, the what and the why. And then add the details, add additional information, and a good thing to add to all of your press releases is a direct quote. If you can get a direct quote for whoever is the important person related in the news story, perfect.
Yeah, and there is, Chelsea, big sister teaching time.
Oh.
There is one key thing I think you left out.
What did I forget?
A boilerplate. Do you know what that is?
That was my 5th thing that I just forgot about.
So, okay, your boilerplate, and I want everyone to think about this. When you guys have, if you've ever clicked on a news story and you've scrolled, you've read it, and then at the bottom, it's got like this italicized text that says like, the seasoned marketer is a blah, 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 blah that was formed in blah, blah, blah by so-and-so, and they offer services for blah, blah, blah.
Why would you say blah, blah, blah? This is our own company.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, I don't have like a boilerplate made up right now, okay?
Why don't you have a boilerplate? You should have a boilerplate always ready.
You are correct in that. Okay, yes, highly recommend, and I'm adding it to my list of homework that you give me every week. Okay. So, but that right there, and then at the last sentence is typically for more information, visit www.theseasonedmarketer.com. Yeah. If you've ever seen that at the bottom of any news story, that's what we call a boilerplate, and really that's included in every press release. It should be. So if you're the idea being this, if you're the company that is sending in factual, newsworthy information that is being shared with the community, it's not an advertisement. Yeah. But if somebody wanted more information, that's where they would find it. That's where they find information about your company and what you do and where to go if they want more information. So it's almost like that's your little spotlight that you could throw in there, and they will literally copy and paste it and put it in there.
That really is my bad. I can't believe I missed that. That's probably the most important piece of a press release.
It's not. You can send it in without a boilerplate. I just think, a lot of times, Chelsea, we talk about that oomph. What's the little extra thing you could be doing? If you're already going to take the time to write a press release and to take the effort to email it to the local media companies, why not add that little boilerplate in there?
Absolutely. And like you said a second ago, like your press release is not a piece of advertising. So that's going to be like your little, I don't want to say piece of advertising, but like if people are interested.
And then also, the other thing it does for the reporter, I think, is it helps for them to be able, so let's say, for example, for Bray, when she does Brazilian wax, but she does other services too.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So when you guys had sent that press release in, that boilerplate also gave reference to the journalist or the reporter where they could go to find out more information about her business. Mm-hmm. When they go on the website and they see that she has other services, well, that just gives them more info to be able to plug into what they're writing or what they're sharing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just good all around to include that.
Absolutely. So I want to say, if you take anything away from this episode, we are hoping that it is press releases do not have to be intimidating. They're absolutely not hard to create. They're very simple, very easy. Just make sure you follow the outline, contact information, title and subheading, summary, news location, your what and your why. Why is it newsworthy? What is it? The details, the additional information, a direct quote if you can do it, and your boilerplate. Very simple outline. It's an easy thing to do. Send it in to as many people as possible. Sometimes you can just copy and paste it into a little dialogue box and send it to the media company. Make sure it is well written, unfortunately void of emotion, because that's what we want from our news, of course. We want them to be unbiased. So void of emotion, well written. So hopefully they'll just copy and paste it and run it.
Yeah, and I think the other little tidbit that I want to toss in there on top of all that is, if you're wondering how do you find an email to send it to, most of these companies do have, so for example, on that submitted news tip page, they usually will have at the bottom, or send your information to a generic email address, or, so what that does is that sends it to the press room. If it's something they want to pick up, they will then appoint a reporter to it who then will reach out to you or something. But the other thing you can do is just go on the website, click on Meet the Team, and find a reporter that either is doing, a particular industry, or, someone that you've seen covers similar type of news stories, whatever it is. And on there, they'll usually have their social media tags and their email address. Click on that email thing, a box will pop up and it's got their email populated. So that's how you could get a more personal point of contact if you want. And let me just leave you guys on this note. I told you that things are changing real fast. I know you guys have seen these reporters and journalists who have social media profiles for their reporting. So they will very specifically create an Instagram page that is dedicated to them as a reporter. Okay. And that's where they give you like the preview of a story they're covering or whatever. It's meant to do two things. It's meant to, one, engage the community and have them be personable and approachable for that reason, because they want people to be able to reach out to them, to give them, stuff. And it also cues up anything that they're working on. So the other thing you can do, you guys, it is not scary to reach out to them. Send them a message. If there's something, if you are going to be having a 5-year celebration of your business, reach out to them and say, hey, I own blah, 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 and this is the event we're putting on. If you're putting on a market, a vendor market, share that info with them. They need your information.
Yeah.
I love that. I've never noticed those profiles.
Really? Well,
yeah. You and I are on different parts of Instagram.
Apparently. Here's what's interesting is I'm in some of these Facebook groups. I'm in one for a local town that's a neighboring town. There was a gentleman like 2 weeks ago who literally posted on the Facebook page for that neighborhood, and he's like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm a reporter for X, Y, and Z. Just know I'm here for you guys. If you see anything happening in the community that you want us to cover, if you see, that's their job. And think about it, like the reporters who really are good at what they do are the ones who have a pulse on the community that they're serving. And so what better way to introduce yourself and say like, hey, I'm here to cover the stuff that you guys are passionate about, that you want to hear about. Okay, well, small business owners, you're a part of that community.
Yes.
Okay, so these people are there to work for you essentially, right? They're there to bring you community information that everybody needs to know. And if you happen to have something that is worthy of that, reach out.
I love that. I think maybe we should put a tip out there for small business owners. Maybe join your local community's Facebook page.
Yeah, that's where I saw it. It was, and not that all reporters do that. That was something that caught my eye. And, interesting, Chelsea, maybe I'll reach out to him and just be like, hey, like, come on the pod. And, yeah, because I think hearing it, it's one thing to hear it from us marketing gals.
Yeah.
All right, no matter how much experience we have, but hearing it from the other side of the person that works it day in and day out, like tell us, does it have to be this stuffy press release? Obviously, we know the answer is no, because, that's just not the case anymore. But does it help them? Yeah, probably.
Well, I think this was a good conversation. Of course, I say that every single time, but it's true every single time. I really hope you guys, if you have anything newsworthy going on, just try it. Just take a chance. Again, like Vivian said, we have a free download to help you through collecting contacts for press releases. So just give yourself a breather, take a second, and go for it. Try it out. But thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Leave a comment with any suggestions, any topics that you want us to talk about. If you are listening on any of the platforms, then subscribe or follow, leave a 5-star review, share this with other small business owners that you think could really benefit from this conversation. Go write your press release and go be the best SOB you can be.